Out. Perfect. I hope that everyone is okay with that. You know, one of our habits is to add your location in the name, just to have an idea on how many regions in the world we are covering with our session now that we are virtual. I'm in London. I know that the two Zaks are also in UK. Anil is in Brighton in UK too. Monica, where are you calling from?
Hi guys, I'm from Romania in Bucharest.
Romania, lovely. Lovely. Then we have Aaron from New Jersey. Maidstone, we see. Aaron, where are you calling from? I see also in some chat. Casablanca, so we have Africa. Amazing.
I'm from London.
Aaron from London? No, okay. Yes.
Whereabouts in Kent, Zak?
Tunbridge.
Tunbridge, same as me.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm up the north end, just off the Shibham Road.
Right, I'm off the Hadlow Road.
Ah, right. Yeah, so pretty close.
Good, good. Yeah. So you can have a beer in a pub after that, so you can meet there.
Yeah. Hadlow Road, that's probably going to be the Carpenters.
Carpenters Arms, yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, so for me, it's 2 fields to the Chaser.
Oh, very nice.
Mm.
So you can have a bit of a walk, you can walk it off afterwards.
Yeah. So it's good fun. Take the dog out, it gets a bowl of water, and I have a pint of beer.
So I'm actually calling from California, but I live in New Jersey, so I'm just in California for a couple months.
So it will be great that you have someone from California at this time.
Yeah. Well, that's where I'm from originally, so I come back here every year for.
Thank you for making me happy.
Yeah. So yes.
Okay.
So I'm actually from Southern California, but I'm up in Northern California right now. So.
Northern California.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I think we can start. You know, at the beginning it's just a chit chat. This is our second event in May, and the event in June is already open for registration. We will have Gustavo Razzetti, that originally was booked for February, but he had a problem, and so we postponed to June. Just for your information, this will be our last event before the summer break. So we will restart our events in September. However, about today's event, I have to say that I'm very, very proud to host Zak. We start having a conversation about this event probably before Christmas, if I correctly remember, something like that. Zak is one of the members of our community, is very often connected and very often actively participating to the session. So this makes, for me, a big value to host someone in our community. And this also creates the occasion for me to, let me say, invite you to be active part of the community. So if you have an interesting case, you want to share some practice, some example, or something that you learn about the digital or about Agile, please keep in touch with me, and so we can arrange a session so you can share your experience, your knowledge inside your community with the other members. So this is exactly a situation like this, and so I'm really happy. That's why I'm so happy. Before hand over the power to Zak, just a quick question for you. I see that you have a PowerPoint. About the Q&A, do you prefer to have a session at the end or during the speech?
with the number of people on, I'm prepared to take questions as we go.
Okay, perfect.
So the talk will be PowerPoint to begin with. Then we're going to do an exercise online to get our team well-being for this team. And then we're going to go on to a Miro board. The board will allow us to let people work at different paces as they go through. So we'll come to that as we go through it. And thank you very much,
Perfect.
Corrado, for arranging this. And thank you to everyone for coming this evening. I hope you find this interesting. So, can you see my PowerPoint? Thank you very much. What we're going to look at today is a way to measure and improve team well-being. The method that we use will be ECVAL's Creative Climate, but the contents that we have, we're going to set the scene by looking at how the economy is shifting, especially post-COVID. We're then going to look at a way of bringing new types of learning into how we as coaches work and can facilitate other people. We'll then do the climate activity, and then I'll introduce you to SALVE, which is an acronym for Scan, Analyze, Lean, Value. And out of that, there will be two new attributes that you will discover. One is a lean scene. It's the equivalent of an internal business story rather than a user story. And the other thing we use is A4 hash business cases. About me, obviously, Zak Moore. I started off as a coder, analyst, oil and gas. I worked in the city of London through the 90s. I was CTO for a few dot-com startups. One failed, two flipped. That means we sold them to other companies, and one floated. After dot-com, I went back to coding and worked mainly in insurance and government, energy, and logistics. Latterly, I've been a founder. When lockdown started, I created a startup. We spent a year in development. We had one client for the first year. They enjoyed the product that we made so much that they've invested in it. And we're now putting in for a grant from the European Innovation Committee. So that's going to be fun. My ethos is to use creativity on firm foundations. I write. You'll find articles of mine in Forbes magazine, where I compare project management methods to music genres, a bit left field. I also write for the Open University. I had a book that topped the Kindle consultancy charts in 2014 called Creative Climate Change, which this follows on from. And my last book was Co-Marathon Man, which is a free-to-press book, and it tells the story of how I recovered from meningitis. You don't come out of meningitis the way you go in. So the overall purpose of life is to find your gift and give it away. So this evening is the stuff that I've discovered on a journey back from a strange place to share with you. So to look at the way of the world as we normally see it, going from left to right. We work with tech teams, DDAT, data, digital, and technology. The methods that we use are usually agile, lean, sometimes scaled. The economies that I've worked in since I started my career in the mid-80s has been project, product, service, and now we're moving into the experience economy. When we need to change things at work, we can reach out to design thinking, and systems thinking. What I'm going to introduce later on today is modal thinking, where we can blend in parts of social, rational, and intuitive work. To do that, we use the best of the design schools that have come around. From that, we're going to focus on the Bauhaus, but I don't care which design school is your favorite, you can use it. The reason we use the Bauhaus is that it started in 1919, and things were a lot worse then than they are now. It was just after the end of the First World War. Spanish flu was more deadly than COVID. And at work, they had the threat of mass production coming in, where today some people see automation as being a threat. Beyond the arts and crafts and the formal design methodology, there is a hierarchy of arts. The first 5, going from the bottom, are architecture, landscaping, poetry and prose, sculpture and painting, and music. They were put together by Hegel and Schopenhauer, philosophers of a few centuries ago. At the turn of the 20th century, dance and movies were added because music and pictures were able to be recorded and transmitted, where people could get the same experience. Today, we're moving towards games. When you compare this to the way that we think of systems, most systems that I've worked with over the last 35 years come out of the architecture metaphor, especially object-oriented systems. When I had to learn to code again 7 years ago, I found that it was more akin to recording music and moving up through movies and games. So if you think of a movie, the way that you bring that together is that you will have an idea, you'll make a pitch, you'll then make the screenplay. From the screenplay, you will storyboard it, and to enhance the user experience, you use music as the soundtrack and FX to cue the user to move on through the story. In short, every piece of work that we do has a pre-production part, production, and post-production, and we'll see that when we're on the Miro board. The skills that are required for the experience economy are taken from the World Economic Forum. In 2019, January that year, they produced the top 10 skills that are in demand. Creativity, persuasion, collaboration, adaptability, and time management, they classify as soft skills. Cloud, ML, rational analysis, people management, and UX, they classify as hard. To me, it seems that people management and time management may be in the wrong sectors, but that's the data, we've got to go with it. So as we move forward, what we're going to look at is the Bauhaus. Now, I mentioned earlier how they were set up. They were set up by a guy called Walter Gropius. He was an architect who couldn't draw, so he knew that he had to collaborate. He brought in some of the best artists in Europe, Vasily Kandinsky, Paul Klee, Otto Schlemmer, Joseph Itten, and they produced a way of learning which is called Vorkers, and you can see it on the left. And the Vorkers method works from the outside towards the inside, where people get their skills. Now, we do not have the luxury of taking a 3-year career break to go to art school to learn this. So the way that we do it is we work from the inside out. We're going to start with modal thinking, and we're going to share some tools that allow you to do that. Around the modal thinking, whenever you see a problem, you can scan, analyze, apply lean principles, and derive value. And value can come in 5 different ways: customer, strategic, operations, team, and self. I tend to encourage people to figure out the value for themselves first, and then take it up through the different layers. As coaches, we have to consider the 6 Ps, which are people, place, process, performance, production, and profit. If you're working for a government or a non-profit organization, simply switch the profit to policy and you'll be fine with this method. We've got a basic course, excuse me, which you can pick up the basics in 2 days. In 3 months, you will be expert at it. And there's various academic courses that we can talk about later. So when we're looking at team well-being, as a coach, we're sitting there. We've got a building on the right, which is called the Neubau building. Neubau stands for new business as usual. The new business as usual means that we are going to lift elements from design schools, the creativity, and enhance the skills that are in demand. On the long wall, you can see a periodic table that you're going to get to play with shortly. We also have an A4 hash process improvement template on the short wall. And underneath it, we have polyvalue where we can measure outputs and outcomes from changes that we make. Place, which is what we're going to look at, is the place for the team. It's part psychology and it's part physical. We're going to see a graph like this that has 10 dimensions on it. So in the chat, I'm going to share a link and I will talk you through that. So you should now have a link in the chat that's going to take you to your browser. Excuse me. You can come off mute if you want. So when you hit the page that's been shared in the link, can you go to the questionnaire tab at the top? Can everybody see the questions? Because I'm sharing, I can't see you.
Well, actually, Zak, I'm on the page. The first question is to add the team name.
So down below that, you will find the dimension.
Go to the questionnaire tab on top, then you get the questions.
Ah, okay, okay. Thank you.
So if we go through each of these questions, these are the kind of things that you as a coach can do with your team tomorrow. This, excuse me, as you will notice, is anonymous. You didn't have to fill in anything to arrive on the page. Being anonymous, it means that you can ask people to be more open and honest. Excuse me. Even though it's raining, I seem to have hay fever. So for the first dimension, playfulness. Now, you might want to take your job that you're doing today, or you might want to take your worst job and fill it in for that. If you take the worst job, we'll get a more interesting view of what's going on. So in your place of work, how relaxed is the workplace? Is it okay to have fun? And if you can fill in your score. Challenge. How challenged and emotionally involved are you to the work? Risk-taking, is it okay to fail? Dynamism, how much meaningful change do you feel is being made? Idea time, do you have time to think things through before having to act? Conflict, to what degree do you engage in interpersonal conflict or warfare? So this is more where you're arguing against the person rather than the principle. Idea support, are the resources and encouragement to give new ideas a try? Does your manager support you to bring new ideas forward? Debates, to what degree do you engage in lively debates about the issues? So this is different to conflicts where you're discussing the processes and the principles. Trust and openness, do you feel safe speaking your mind or offering a different point of view? And freedom, how free are you to decide how to do your job? So if you can press save after you've answered that, you should be presented with an overview. I can see the responses coming through. We're at 9 out of 20 at the moment. Is anybody having trouble?
Zak, I have a question on the on the questions that you can see in the list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, about the conflict.
Yeah.
The question apparently is that if you have no conflict, you have a lower score, and if you have conflicts, you have an higher score. And this makes me confusing because normally in the other question, an higher score is, let me say, better. So apparently conflicts, the logic of the question in conflict is the opposite. Am I getting the right point? Or
you are correct. So I should have pointed that out as we went through. That when it does score, normally you would expect to see the conflict to be closer to the center of the target diagram that we come up with, rather than at the end, pushing out towards the end. But if you scroll down, you'll see a list, or if you're on the results page now.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got the nice diagram, which is the eye candy that you can put in front of people. If you want to save it for yourself, just press the blue save button and you will get a download of that diagram. We suggest that you do this because the system is anonymous. We don't store tokens, but we can find and you can find your previous results by using the file name when it's downloaded.
So you can aggregate, or better, maybe calculate the average if you receive more responses on the same team name.
Yeah.
Okay.
So normally what people do is they do this measurement, they'll make some changes, and they'll come back later on and do maybe in 3 months' time, they'll come back and remeasure it. So thank you for that, for those that took part. Let's get back to Zoom. Right, so whilst I'm sorting out the Miro board, bring this back up. So what we've just done is gone through this exercise here. I'm going to put it onto the Miro board. So what we've got for you are a couple of ways to get into modal thinking rather quickly. So I'm going to share one link right now, and in a couple of minutes, I'll share another. Excuse me, whilst I sort to try to get. All right. Are there any musicians in this evening? It's not usually a call that goes out on an agile course, but for people that understand music, we're going to have a look at modes, starting with the musical aspect of it first. So what this allows you to do is decide on how you want to work. You can make a selection. The descriptions are of the different musical modes, and you can then click through onto Spotify and get a little playlist. Once that's done, we will get you on to another way of looking at it. So that's just a little bit of fun. But it gives you an idea of how you can pull an idea from music and employ it in business. So the next link I'm going to share is the Creatable. And what this is an 8-step divergent convergent process. You will see the rainbow lozenge at the top. Now, you don't have to do all 8 steps, but it goes from explore through to define, gather, generate. Then you sift and sort and come back out with a plan. There's 80 color-coded elements on the table that I'm about to share. And when you click on the elements, you'll be presented with a PDF of instructions. I would ask you to look at the right-hand sidebar, and at the bottom you will see 3 management modes, which are analytic, social, and intuitive. At the bottom of the table, there's a row of light gray boxes, which are end-to-end processes for creative problem solving. And underneath that are the 10 mainstream management methods that we are endorsed by to use this method. So if you're doing any of the main agile things or a bit more, you'll be fine to use this. So there's the Creatable link in. I'm now going to get hold of the board. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Feel free to have a play. And now, here's the board set up with the results that we brought in. So if I go back to sharing, so when you come onto the board, you're going to get a left and right. What we're looking at on the left is the salve workflow, which is the way that I, as a coach, use techniques to help the team improve their process. To the right of the board, you'll find examples, a reference website that has these tools and a lot more, and a feedback form. And what I'd ask you to do, if you're kind enough, is to leave your feedback so that I can improve this as we go. So, on to the board. Okay. I'm now sharing the board for those of you that don't want to come on. For those of you that do want to come on, feel free to do what you want. I've got a backup. You won't be destroying anything. So if we look at the salve workflow, we can see that the score that we had for the team here shows that it's pretty good. We're a bit low on risk-taking, challenge, dynamism. Idea time is good. Conflicts are good. Idea support seems to be good. So we're getting the bit. Debates could be better. And playfulness could be better. So what we tend to do with teams is get them to improve the climate by coming up with ideas. And when we ask them to bring ideas up, I find that with technical teams, they like the Creatable to be able to go into things and to find it. Down on the bottom rows, there's an end-to-end process called the Disney process. So if you have ever watched a Disney movie in a family setting, you've got preteens, you've got teens, and you've got adults. The preteens laugh at the slapstick bit of it. The teens laugh at the slapstick bit, and then they go a bit quiet because they realize that there's a rite of passage coming along later in their lives. The adults laugh with a hint of nostalgia about them. When you correspond that to business, you'll find that the tech teams are like the preteens. The middle managers are like teenagers. Apologies, all middle managers. And the strategists are like the adults. So what we do is we ask people to make a story, essentially a lean scene. All agile people are familiar with user stories. You know, as a such and such, I want a feature in order to achieve some value. That's all very well and good. But what nobody seems to have picked up is that when agile comes inside the business and starts to scale inside the business, the user story is no good, especially if you're in a service organization or an experienced one. So we ask the teams, because there's more people on the teams, and they know the work better than most of the people who try to manage them, to come up with ideas on how they can improve their personal enjoyment at work. And we also ask them to think about how the operations people are going to adopt to those ideas and how the strategists are. And for most techies, they don't see beyond their team boundary. they might see 6 weeks down the line because that's the average length of a backlog. There might be more in it, they might like it. Scaled teams can see 3 months ahead. As a coach, I consider it my job to be able to take the ideas that the teams come up with and use the higher levels of thinking that are in the Creatable to make sure that I can get benefits for the operations and the strategists. So this is a bit like making the movie pitch that I was talking about earlier. You can take it to convince people. When we do the main course for teaching, we will take you through Cialdini's principles of persuasion, which helps this. But normally with a team of 8 techies, they will come up with 3 improvement ideas. And then as a coach, it's our job to go and decide if there's mileage in taking it forward. There may be examples, as you can see from the examples to the right, that the tech team wanted to shift from one version control system to another, but the managers and the strategists said no, because they were getting such a good deal from Microsoft that we had to stick with their technology. So the other thing that we do is we t-shirt size the business. Taking the concept of t-shirt sizing the work, we say that there's different t-shirts for team players, operations, and strategy. But at the heart of each of these is the salve method of modality. With operations, where most coaches fit in, we've got the 6 Ps. For the strategists, they're kind of thinking longer term, and each of the salve analysis, lean, and value sections splits into 3 different steps. So you go and have a conversation with those people, and they'll say yay or nay. Sometimes they'll come back and they'll ask for a bit more to take forward. So this is a very lightweight way of creating an A4 business process change. And what we're focusing on here is changing the process rather than changing the product. If you're looking at product change, you may be looking at OKRs and using KPIs. Here, we're saying there's a problem on the process. The team's recognized it. We want to fix it. This is a solution we're offering. These are the goals that we're looking at. So with the SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. We've got root cause analysis that comes out of the Creatable, comes out of anything else. If you wait right to the end, I'll give you the big reveal. And then we can say what the actions are, the confirmation of what it's going to be like. So what's your definition of done? And then we've got 3 things that you don't usually find in OKRs and with the product aspect of it. First thing is follow-up, contingency. So I don't agree with the agile method or mantra of fail fast. To me, you've got to have time to practice by yourself, rehearse in a group, and then perform. And there's timescales that go in for that when you're working in teams, which are already in place, so there's no big change there. We also, by putting in contingency, it tells people that we've looked at risk from different levels. We also look for the return on investment through the operational layer. So you should consider business operations. It looks horizontally through the business. Strategy looks up and down. So we can fill in words and or numbers there, which I'm going to come to now. And normally to create an A4 business case, you're looking at 4 15-minute sessions We suggest you work in 15-minute sessions for this because that's the optimum time for your brain. We use a technique called flow racking. Flow racking is excellent stuff if you're over 50, because once you learn the technique, you are effectively brushing your brain using natural neurochemistry. So you have a problem, you struggle with it, come off the problem, maybe have a coffee, maybe have a cup of tea, go back into it with a different perspective, change mode, essentially, and focus on it. And when you focus on it that way, you can get a 10-second lift into the gamma waves for the brain. And over time, you can increase that up to 5 to 15 minutes. And the reason that gamma waves in the brain are good is that they produce the chemicals that attack the proteins that build the plaques in the brain. So it's giving you a way of potentially staving off dementia. So at work, you can take a 15-minute break every 2 hours, as you're meant to do, and think about something that solves a problem for yourself, for your team, and for the bigger business. And then it takes a bit of time to implement that. So when we look at this way of working, even though we've been talking about creativity, we lived straight out of the handbooks, the one we get from Sandhurst. So the tactical handbook teaches young commanders to plan forward, plan backward, plan 1 up and 2 up. So when we look at this process, we can ask the teams to come out and give us a risk matrix using ROAM from the SAFE way of working. So that's risk, owned, accepted, mitigated. As a coach, we will take stuff from the Silicon Valley product group, V2FU. So you've got customer value, feasibility, usability, you build it, will they use it? Which is not the same thing as saying, if I build it, will they buy it? Because what I've found running a startup over the last 2 years is that the managers that we pitch the tools to love it, but the people that are going to use it don't like it. So we're back to the drawing board there. And then there's viability. Is it good for the business? And when you come up to the top level, you've got RAID, which is your typical strategic analysis. So to get answers to the ROI at speed, when we're looking across the business, looking at the operational side of things, we split it into 3 bits, and this is like the pre-prod, the prod, and the post-prod, the production stuff. Discovery and learning. People want to learn for themselves, and they're doing that on the job as they are coding. Most managers focus on the implementation and they forget about the discovery and learning. And if they focused an extra 5% on discovery and learning and gave people the ability to bring their ideas forward, which is what we're all about here, you'll find that your productivity starts to increase in ways that you never thought possible. And commercialization, again, this is a thing that most tech teams never see, especially in larger organizations. They don't see any feedback from the stuff that they do on the day-to-day, how it's affecting the customers and the bottom line. So what we have here is straight out knowledge management. These blueprints are ontologies, and you can go through and insert your own taxonomy. So the ontology are the things in big letters, like discovery and learning has got 3: internal renewal, acquired capabilities, and networking. And you can change those to what suits your company, and then put in the subheadings. And if you look to the right on the examples later on, you'll see that the easiest way to do it is to highlight the taxonomies in green, what you're going to go for, and they will correspond to KPIs. We also do the same thing for the strategic view when we look down through the company. So to get your C-suite on board, you have to show them that you're thinking about efficiency, you're thinking about risk management through portfolio management, and again, innovation, learning, and adaptation. These are the things that people want. We look at automation. There's an opportunity there, but you've got to be careful how you do this, because some people they perceive it as a threat. National differences, that's still in place, where people will offshore the work to get cheaper labor. But the main thing that this gives you is the ability to do a successful transformation. Scope economies and scale economies allow you to try an idea out on one team. And then as a coach, you will see shortly how to create a use case story and be able to share the successes. And again, you can just highlight the bits in here that are relevant, tie them into KPIs. If you're finding that you've got something that is not measurable with a current KPI on the balanced scorecard, you go and have a talk with the people above you, 1 up, 2 up, and you say, look, this is coming out, it's emerging. Can we change the balanced scorecard so that in 6 to 8 weeks, when we've done this, you're in a position to be able to take the idea forward and share it with other people. So what we've found, or just looked at, and I'm afraid I'm going a bit quick, I do understand it. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask?
I think that maybe we should make a try, Zak.
Make a what? Okay, so let me carry on if I'm not hearing anything. What you find is that these techniques mean that you come up very quickly with ideas. Where you'll find the delay in getting the ideas accepted is when you try to talk to the operations managers and the strategic managers. But again, you've got to be able to explain to them, if they can't find 15 minutes in their day, they're not managing their time. Somebody's going to pick up on it. From the stuff that I've been doing over the last years, mainly been government work. And this approach allows me to very quickly put my ideas together that if you were doing it in government, you'd probably have to fill in 30 forms that would correspond to this, which is just, okay, that's the way government is. So when we implement a lean scene, you can think of it more as, if people are engaged, it's going to be like a movie. So you go back to the movie metaphor, and if you go and watch Harry Potter, those films lift and drop people's emotions 7 times. So these are more to do with how are people feeling as the work's being done. And as a coach, you should be able to determine when things are on the turn. So these things come from Kurt Vonnegut, who was a cult novelist. And he put them forward for his PhD in anthropology in 1953. So running through them, you've got the types of stories where you get people that will come out and they'll tell you that, you know, the typical, let's do it agile and it'll look like this. There's a little bit of progress every time. Pure myth, creation story. Old Testament is where you've got your project running or your product management going through. And what you find is that what you're reporting is not what needs to be done. And the project just gets cancelled. Boom. Sometimes it'll be like the New Testament where it gets cancelled and then it will kick off again. Case in point is the Home Office, they were asked to write the police national computer. That project got canned after 2 years and then brought back out again. Which way is up? This is very similar to some of the Shakespeare plays, Hamlet in particular, where nothing's really answered at the end. It's a bit like a soap opera. In some places that I go to work, people aren't there to really do the work. They're there for the social engagement with each other. In ways, it reminds me of EastEnders more than, or any soap opera, rather than a way of doing things as I was used to doing. Bad to Worse speaks for itself. It's like that Kafka way of looking at life. If you find that you're in that for more than 2 days, go and speak to someone. You've got to get it out. Boy Meets Girl and Man in a Hole, they're very, very similar. Any rom-com that you've got starts off all bright and breezy. All of a sudden something comes along, you think, yeah, great. Something happens, you go down, and then you come back up again, and out you go. It's not like Kubler-Ross, but with these things, once you are aware that people are going through this, or if you're aware that you're doing it yourself, you can apply an intervention. So I've shown you how to do it using music. You can do it with art. You can do it with books. It's just a case of changing your mode to get you out of one way of thought. Cinderella storyline, you can think of every James Bond movie that's been there. It starts off with the guy's in a bad way, usually. It then gets better, then Q turns up and gives him the stuff where he can go to the ball and fight the bad guys. And then something goes wrong again. And then he comes up again. So those ways that you can pull that in. Again, you could say, we're going to have a look at the share prices. The stuff goes through. And then when you come to share success, as a coach, you will have usually been called in to help a team do something. If the team's been running well, they don't need coaching. It's that simple. So usually there's a kind of problem that you've got to be aware of. And the managers that hire coaches are aware of the denial, the distraction, the doubt, and the delay. And your job is to get the team to get through that. And that's where I use the climate. So instead of focusing on individuals, you focus on the individuals making the climate better. And the transformation, as I said, it's a marginal gain. And you will come through resistance and rebuke a lot. And that's where using the A4 hash with the operational and the strategic complements and the risks in there allows you to call in top cover. So you can go to the C-suite and get them to come and address the troops, and you will get 6 months breathing time. I've done that twice. It means that I'm not favorite with the team, but the results prove that it's right. It saved some people their jobs. So that's what we've got. Are there any questions so far?
I have a question, Zak.
Yeah, sure.
The numbers, I mean, the time that you mentioned in the different stages, is something that you have already checked and verified with teams? What is the response?
Yep. So the timescales are quite standard. I've been doing this for 10 years. And what I tend to do is use the examples that are to the right-hand side of the board. So somebody will say, what do you mean by a lean scene? And you've got to explain it to them. And I don't impose any story structure on it. You know, if you want to, you could write it as 3 user stories. The team gets this, operations get that value, and strategy gets the other. Sometimes I'll write them maybe in a Shakespeare sonnet kind of way. Other times a simple haiku is enough. 3 lines, do this, boom, we get this result. So there's different ways of going about it. So the process that I put forward is opinionated in so much as I say you should use creativity. And that's where my opinionation stops. I want to see the creativity that you bring forward. And when people bring forward creative ideas, there are no wrong answers. It's like strategy. So the whole, go back to the board. So all this stuff, if I zoom out, so if you use the examples with your teams or by yourself, you can see how lean scenes work. If you want to go and check the website, you'll get some more tools that allow you to get through it. And there's far less coughing on the website than you get here. So all this salve over workflow stuff sits above So it's above a whole stack of strategic models that you can use, which ties back into, excuse me. So this allows you to pull up the models that you need when you're thinking strategically. And at the same time, focus in on the level of detail that your teams need to make the work happen. So I've been talking for just about an hour now. I know that I've done quite a lot. For those of you that are on the board, I would ask if you could do some stuff to let me know what you liked. What you didn't like. What was lacking and what you longed for. And I will stop sharing and take any questions.
Please unmute and make your question. Is everything clear in the process? I'm sorry? No. I was trying to provoke more questions. Another from me, so in the blank. When you have a new team,
yep,
and you present this flow work,
yep,
how is the response of a new team? Because I apparently it looks, how can I say, it's something that you have to design. Thinking about, for example, an easy retrospective. Okay, this is something that any team can do very quickly. And given your experience, what is the response?
Indeed. The response is usually very good. So if you look at the examples column, there's A4 initiative examples. And what this was there were 8 examples made by a team of 20 developers, and they were new. They were a Polish software house that was hired by an Amsterdam software development company that makes applications for social services. They'd never worked together before. The product owner who was there has used these techniques since 2012. He's used them at Elsevier, he's used them at Vogue, and he's now using them for the Dutch social services. And what he did was he got the teams to come up with their A4 hash initiatives. They did that in the new year. The product owner then got hit with COVID, which turned out to be long COVID. So he was off for about 8 weeks before he could return to work for any meaningful time. But in that time, the Polish developers implemented all the lean scenes. And the guy who was off with long COVID, when he came back to work, he got a promotion because his team was able to work and implement process improvements.
Good, great example, great case.
It's a nasty story, but the outcome is there. So it's just different ways of doing it. And this stuff is new and flexing. It's not prescribed in the way that Agile is. So if you remember back when Agile came along, there wasn't an industry to it. It was just a good idea that a couple of guys in Utah had. And that makes me wonder why Agile hasn't been cancelled yet, because there were women in that meeting. Marina Devos was one. And why they weren't invited in to give their views, I don't know. But anyway, sometimes when we do the Agile stuff, let me go back to sharing.
Just today, I was in a flame on LinkedIn about the Agile Industrial Complex.
Yeah. So sometimes what we can do is, here's an example of the user story. So you can see the kind of clients that have been using this over the last 5 years or so. Equinor, Harrods, Cabinet Office, Vogue, Atos, Smart Video is my own little startup, which is doing rather well. But when you come to report the project, you can take the opening measure for your climate, create the initiative, implement it, and at the same time, or at the end, you can remeasure the climate and see how people have done. And you can also get the metrics involved. So on this one, you can see that the journey that the team had started off bright and breezy, and then they went down for a bit, and then they came back up, and that's reflected in their sprint story points. They improved for 6 months, and then they reverted to type, and they all got fired. With Harrods, you can see that we looked at the team. We had to improve the agile maturity. So we used the Thoughtworks 5-step maturity model. You can see it opening, you can see it closing, and you can see how the team has changed in between. There's more freedom, trust and openness, and you can see the shape of the journey. So they came in, they got to a level and plateaued, and that was more than enough for what had to be done. So what I was saying is the way of learning is not like go to the book, do all the studying, do an exam. So you do it on the job, and using these 15-minute flow racking periods, you can come up with it. Cabinet Office, here's an interesting one. The Cabinet Office is very, very bureaucratic, as I'm sure you're aware. I think their full complement of project documentations runs to 60. They have 2 books, the Green Book and the Purple Book, and you'll find that you can spend 6 months planning a project which can be finished in 3 weeks. It's a ridiculous amount. So all we did was drop in some of the ideas that we used and shifted them from the service design mentality to a product design mentality. And you can see here, there was no discernible change or disruption. Cabinet Office, we read about it, we hear about it, but basically it is a soap opera. And there's people in there that Dominic Cummings was quite right. Vogue, on the other hand, their journey didn't show any change, but what they got was a way of visualizing their work and doing it in such a way that they could make time to analyze using the 3 different modes. And then they brought in practice and rehearse. What they found was that 2 years of seniority in a team made a heck of a lot of difference, especially when people were in their 20s and learning the ropes. So they had different heuristics and different levels of skill that wouldn't be apparent to an outside manager, but the team sorted themselves out. This one's rather a sad one. It was a center of excellence that never got going. They were the kind of people that focused on playbooks rather than thinking about the book of the play. By the book of the play, I mean opera is the Italian word, I'm sure you know, coda, for work. And if you can get your work laid out as if it was opera, it's a lot more joined up than if it were just little aspects, as if you were a pub football team going for the mixed playbook. Here's one where we found that the team were a bit too playful and not getting the work done. So GFK is a German firm that aggregate market data, and they've been bought by Colbert Crabbage Roberts, who are a kind of slash and dash type company. They come in and get companies efficient, then sell off the bits that are inefficient. So there was a cultural problem going on between the German way of working and the way that the Americans wanted to work. So they were changing the managers, and the managers were quite reticent to do anything that wasn't by the book. But we managed to solve that and get their climate fixed and implement DevOps and creative thinking all at once. And this is my little side hustle, where I'm putting in a tool that lets people do what used to be a 12-hour job in under an hour. And you can see that running in a startup, it feels more like Cinderella. And we're just about to meet our fairy godmother again, I think.
That's interesting.
So those are areas that we look at. Here's one example from the GFK aspect, where the developers wanted to get DevOps running. So they were splitting it out by teams in blue, green for operations, and red for strategy. They then switched it into A4 initiative. And you can see here that instead of putting in figures, they've put in words, because if you are a team doing the work, the company has already paid for you to be there. When you're working on projects, you can take your 15-minute break every 2 hours, but you're still going to be charging into that project cost bucket. So it's a conversation that you have to have quite forcefully with project managers and administrators. And again, you can see here where they found where the good stuff was going to be and what they could focus on at the operations level and at the strategic level. And it's just a way I find of doing work very quickly, being able to bring up ideas, develop them by yourself, and then if you want to, you can share on the whiteboard and get things done. But not everybody that I work with is an extrovert and enjoys whiteboards. So these tools allow you to do it by yourself and then share if you want to. So thank you very much. I realize I've talked a lot. Are there any questions?
Any more for any more?
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Rupa, say it again.
I said no question. That was a really good talk. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Rupa.
Okay. Well, I think if there are no questions, we can close the event.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zak, for sharing this. I have to say that luckily we recorded the session, so we have the opportunity to review it because there are a lot of stuff actually there, a lot of practices, and let me say, strings and activities.
Yeah, so the way to use this stuff is just cherry pick the bits that you want. It's not prescribed as Agile is now. This is like the new way of doing Agile coming up. So take it and enjoy it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Zak, for sharing this. And we will let you know when the recording will be available. A final question from me. The link to the Miro board, it will be accessible, let me say, for a while, or are you going to close it?
No, I'll keep it there for at least a week.
Okay.
So normally what I do is I wait, and if it's during the week, if there's 3 days without activity, I'll archive the board off.
Perfect. Instead, the tools that created the radar chart is available forever, I mean.
Yeah, that's free forever at the moment. We're doing about 200 customers a year. So we know it's being used. At some point, if it takes off, then we're going to have to put a charge on to just pay for the storage costs that we have.
Yeah, clear, makes sense.
But that's early adopters get in, use it. If you've used it and you come back, we'll give you a good deal later on.
Okay, perfect.
So, thank you.
Okay, thank you again, and thank you all for joining the session, and have a great evening, I would say.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Zak.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.